A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Champions and Innovators webinar. Today's Champions and Innovators webinar is focusing on the back office processes and their impact on the customer experience. This is an ongoing series of webcasts, ladies and gentlemen, which are celebrating the success stories in customer experience improvement and the innovations that will drive future success. The series has been devised and developed and produced by the Directors Club of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and today's webcast will focus on back office processes and the impact on the customer experience. Today's webcast is generously supported by Genesis, and we will be hearing from a Genesis representative today as part of the proceedings. My name is John Snow, and I am the moderator for this webcast. I'm also the chair of the Directors Club. Today's customer champions are Jason Stanton, who is the Head of Designing Excellence for Customer Operations at BSkyB, Jim Cheshire, who is Head of Process Improvement at Prudential Assurance, Ben Nicholson, former Head of Operational Excellence at Barclays Capital Operations, and Oti Vort, who is Vice President, Global Customer Service at BT Global Services. Our customer innovator today is Dudley Larris, who is Senior Solutions Marketing for Business Applications at Genesis. The running order for today's webinar is we've got a balanced mix of customer champion spotlights and innovation bubbles, and you can see the running order there in front of you. Post the event, if you want to look up the profiles of our individual speakers, you can do so via the event section on the Directors Club website. More information about that a bit later on. We also have a panel discussion and Q&A session at the end of the formal presentations. Now, in terms of your participation in today's webcast, you can at any time during the formal presentations, you can hit the Q&A button, which is that question mark icon on the floating toolbar, and that will bring up the Q&A window. And in the smaller screen, the lower screen, you can enter your question. It can be as simple or as complex as you like, up to 256 characters. Then you press the send button, and that comes through to us here, and we will be answering as many of your questions during the Q&A session, which follows the presentations. Just to repeat, you don't have to wait until the Q&A session to post your questions, and you can post as many questions as you like during the webinar itself. So you can also tweet this webinar if you wish to make comments, tell your followers what's going on. You can use the hashtag DCGBNI. So on with the show. We have a packed schedule today. So I'm going to introduce our first customer champion spotlight. This is Jason Stanton, who's Head of Designing Excellence, Customer Operations at BSkyB. So, Jason, welcome, and thank you very much for participating in today's session.
Thank you, John, and thank you for this opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. As John said, I'm Jason Stanton. I'm Head of Designing Excellence at BSkyB. I'm happy to share with you today one of our transformation projects, which has really demonstrated the value that back office teams can really have, both to customer experience and to people satisfaction as well. Nothing I share with you today will be rocket science. It really is good old-fashioned, pragmatic contact centre management that sometimes we need to take a step back or two and remember to do now and again. As I start off today, I thought it would be good just to give you a little bit of a background to Sky. I'm sure most of you know the Sky brand, and in fact I'm sure a lot of you are actually Sky customers. I'm not going to go through the first 3 or 4 slides in detail, but I just wanted to give you that background, as I said. So Sky as a brand now is over 20 years old. We have around 11 million customers in Sky, and we've seen some phenomenal growth over the past few years, particularly in our broadband arena, which is where I'm going to concentrate our back office transformation project a little bit later on. We currently have 23,000 employees in Sky, and that's spread over 14 different contact centres throughout the UK. We also have around 120 back office advisors, and as I mentioned, I'll explain a little bit more about that in a little bit detail later. Sky really does believe in better, and we're very much committed to employment within the UK, and have seen our employment rise over 40% between 2006 and 2011. That has been all based on frontline customer service advisors, and I hope demonstrates our opportunities and our real focus on delivering what is a great customer experience. But as you'll hear from me, we don't always get it right, but what we believe is important is on the occasions that we do get it wrong, that we fix things really quickly. So moving on then now to talk about back office, and I took the definition, as you can see on the slide in front of you, of what a back office really does mean to people. So it's often a centre or an office which conducts administrative work and carried out without actually talking to customers. And that was actually true of Sky. We were very heavily paperly led about 18 months ago. Our advisors actually refused to talk to customers, didn't believe it was part of their role. There was multiple handoffs between the departments that we had within back office. We couldn't track individual or even team performance. And more importantly, our back office function tended to concentrate on our new acquisitions, so our new orders in Sky. So actually this was a really terrible customer experience and the first impressions of doing business with Sky. So we knew that we needed to change, and we needed to change and do something quite dramatically. For our customers, it felt like they waited too long if something had gone wrong. It felt like they didn't value them in any way. They never talked to the same person twice. And as I mentioned earlier, over 14 contact centre sites, any of the calls from a customer could land in any one of those sites when the order hadn't been fulfilled. And we were getting a real sense from our customers on surveys and complaints that they were just not confident that their issue would actually be resolved. I mentioned that I would concentrate on our broadband proposition. So our broadband proposition has grown dramatically, particularly over the last 3 years, to over 4 million customers. We have around 25,000 new orders every week into Sky, and around 10% of those orders fall out of what we call the happy path. So that's where our back office advisor needs to do something to get that customer back on track. I mentioned to you the 125 back office advisors that we had within Sky. They were spread over 3 different sites, all doing very different jobs. And actually sometimes an order could fall off the happy path for 2 or 3 different reasons. And therefore that's where we were seeing lots of handoffs actually between the departments. We knew we needed to stop this. We knew we needed for our advisors to be able to track performance, and we knew we absolutely needed to get to our customers before they came to us. Often customers would come to us to say an engineer had not turned up, and actually we didn't know that because it was still sat in our work queue, and we're having to go out and try and fish that order out of the queue to try and resolve that issue for the customer. We needed to move away from those multitask teams. We needed true workflow. We really needed our back office advisors to understand the value that they added to the operation. They didn't understand that they could generate revenue within the back office area. They didn't understand that actually they were stopping revenue from being generated because the order hadn't been fulfilled. We needed to try and route the calls into one area so we're able to see the orders and what we could do for the customers, and actually more importantly, we needed to get to the customers before they even got to us. For those customers that were in pain, we needed to case manage them. We needed to be updated on what's actually happening to their orders, not again waiting for them to contact us. We needed the customers to feel valued. We needed to get it right first time. But we realised that not only did we have an opportunity to improve the customer experience, that actually our back office advisors were probably some of our most demotivated people within the contact centres. They didn't feel they had the brand, they didn't feel they had an identity of their own, and they absolutely didn't understand the value that they were adding to the business. So we decided to launch a transformation program which we called Believing in a Better Back Office, that then transformed into what some of you may have seen in some of our advertising today, which is Switch Squad or Order Recovery Team. We skills assessed each of our agents and realigned their roles to their strengths, creating one centralised back office team. We redesigned our telephony so customers in difficulty were routed to a back office expert. We designed our systems so actually they could recognise that the customer's order hadn't been fulfilled and therefore routed them directly into that back office advisor. We retrained all our back office advisors to talk directly to customers, which they previously hadn't done. And we very much concentrated on what we call tone of voice training. So a lot of our back office advisors were very nervous about talking to customers. They were more of the technical experts, but through intensified training and coaching, we got the majority of them there. Not all of them made it, and we found new roles for the people who didn't. We reorganised our workflow and our reporting, meant that each task and individual could be tracked, both from efficiency and from a customer satisfaction point of view. We brought together, as I mentioned, the disparate back office functions into that one seamless customer journey. And we created that brand, which we called Order Recovery, and then was picked up by our marketing team as Switch Squad. And some of you may have seen the advert that stars Jennifer Aniston that advertises that it's now really easy to switch to Sky. That wouldn't have been possible some 18 months ago, and I know all the advisors in the Switch Squad team now feel really proud that they've been part of that journey. What happened then on the back of this? Well, we've really delivered some great benefits. Overall, we've improved our SLAs. We saw an average 50% reduction in customer lead times. Our customers in difficulty are now routed to the specialist, as I mentioned, so we're getting it right first time more than ever. We saw 50% reduction in missed appointments just by gently reminding our customers of their appointment times. We do that via SMS, but we also do outbound calls as well. We saw a 5% increase in customers taking another appointment following a problem. So this is where a customer got to such a point of pain that they were refusing to go ahead with their order with Sky. Two stats that you don't see on that slide, which I think we're proud of the most, is employee satisfaction in that team is one of the highest in the estate across Sky, and are now reporting a 93% employee satisfaction. That score some 18 months ago was in the low 30s, so we're really proud of bringing those advisors on that journey. Another area that we've developed into more recently is the value that that team can add from a sales point of view. Because of the way the customers' orders had fell out and I suppose the advisor's view of the experience customers were having, none of our advisors would have an adding value conversation or trying to upsell to these customers because they felt as though that wasn't the right time to do it because they weren't happy with Sky. Through again repositioning and really focusing on the proactive, we're now seeing between 12 and 15% of those new orders, our order recovery team are actually able to upsell another product. So again, they can really see that they're adding value to those teams. What I would say, I suppose, to recap in all of this and the success that we had, is we involved our advisors from day one. They're the guys that knew where the processes weren't working. They were the ones that we really felt could help us explain, and improve the processes and really add that value piece. We really believe that back office can add value. It can drive increased revenue, as I've mentioned, and it can certainly drive increased customer satisfaction. We believe that asking our back office advisors to pick up the telephone and talk to customers directly instead of handing off or asking customers to call into us has been our biggest success. It meant we've got it right first time, and it's meant that the real experts on those orders can actually talk to the customers directly and fix their issues. One tip I would give you is consistently report back the value that your back office teams are adding. We didn't do that at the beginning, and our back office advisors couldn't really understand the revenue that they were generating, or as I mentioned earlier, the revenue that they were losing. And once we started to report back the individuals and the teams and the department of that revenue and the increased customer satisfaction, we really saw that motivate our advisors. As I mentioned at the beginning, not a lot of it was rocket science. It was about taking a step back and really looking at great good old contact centre management. That's me whizzed through one of our projects, and I'm going to hand back over to John.
Thanks very much, Jason. A great insight into Sky, and you've got a great case study there in terms of connecting the back office to real customer experience improvement and improvement for the business as a whole. So that's really good. Thank you. We'll come back to you at the end of the formal presentations, Jason, so that we can put some questions to you. But for now, thank you very much indeed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to post questions to Jason on what you've just seen in the presentation, you can do so by clicking on that question mark icon on your floating toolbar and inputting your questions. Now, if you've been interested in the slides which you have seen today, you will be able to access the recording of this webinar, so you don't have to scribble down all the detail during the live session. And we will be posting you the link to that tomorrow morning, so you can catch up, and you can also forward that link on to colleagues if you think that they will benefit but couldn't make the live presentation. Now, moving swiftly on, we have the first of our innovation bubbles, and I'm going to call on our resident innovator for today, which is Dudley Larris, who's from our supporting organisation today, which is Genesis. So Dudley, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks so much, John. I appreciate it.
I'm going to hand you over, well, I'm going to first of all change your slide deck, so let me just do that as I speak to you, and then I'm going to hand you over control of WebEx, which I'm doing at the moment, and over to you, Dudley.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and greetings from San Francisco, where it's the middle of the night, but I'm really happy to be here with you. Jason really set me up really well. That was a great story, and it really dovetails into what I'm talking about today. And again, my name is Dudley Larus, and I'm a Senior Solutions Manager for Genesis for the back office. And we're talking about really the same topic that Jason was talking about, which is that the back office and customer loyalty and the customer experience are tied together very much so. So just taking off on that concept that we just heard about, which is that we do strongly believe, as you just heard, that the customer experience is really impacted by service fulfillment areas, or some people call it the back office. The customer experience might start in the contact center or the front office, but many times in so many industries, a claim may be created in the front office, or a complaint may be registered, or an order is taken there, but then it goes into some type of a workflow, typically through some type of a system such as a CRM, a CEVO system, or an SAP system, some system that creates workflow. And we're not trying to replace that at all with our solution, but there are some problems that come up that, I think Jason was addressing in some of those workflows that I'm going to talk about in this first segment. In the second segment, I'll talk about how we can overcome some of those problems. But we do strongly believe that this customer experience is impacted by the back office. And if you just think of our own behaviors and typically what happens with us when we order something online, for example, a clock starts in our head, and we get a promise on service delivery. And service delivery has been crunched down so much more by some of the great online businesses that do promise us delivery and get us delivery in a matter of a couple of days. So that starts to impact us. And when we're dealing with other types of businesses, telcos, insurance companies, banks and so forth for mortgages, we expect the same type of on-time service delivery as we are getting from some of these incredible retailers. So, and when that doesn't happen to our expectations, we start doing things like calling in and finding out where our work is, which creates a tremendous amount of more work for your businesses, because you're going to have to then try to find out the status of the order. That might not be that easy and so forth. So one of our things that our research has shown is that while there's tremendous efficiency in the workflows from those systems, there is an area in these workflows, and for each business type of vertical business, there's a different type of workflow. Let's say let's take an insurance claim. That claim goes through the workflow process, the case management system, but at some point it calls for a person to review the case. And, for an order exception in telco or broadband, it may be there's an order exception that just doesn't fit the perfect workflow, and somebody has to look at it and review it, and the company can't take revenue. The customer doesn't get their products until it's reviewed. Excuse me. So what research has shown is when in those situations when employees are called for to be part of that workflow, up to 28% of their time can be wasted, and I'll talk about how that can possibly be. But what's the impact of that wasted time? And then I'll also substantiate that it is being wasted. It is incredibly like shutting down your service fulfillment area for 3 months of the year, because if it's true that 28% of the employees' time is wasted in some of these processes, and that is just an amount of time that is unacceptable to be wasted. So where is the inefficiency? I want to talk about that for a minute. While these workflow systems are very efficient and have structured great processes, when it comes to the people side of things, there's a lot of inefficiency. And what happens is work is delivered to the back office employees. It's typically delivered into work bins or inboxes, electronic inboxes or queues, and they're not highly prioritized. So which work should a person do when it comes into a queue or a work bin? There's wasted time selecting the next job. In some of these bullets, I won't read all these things, but it's hard to share work, or it's not very flexible. It goes into a work bin and then it stays there, and then where the wasted time comes from, which job should I do now? What's the most important job? Supervisors get involved in that. A lot of wasted time. A lot of these systems don't have knowledge about the employee's skill sets in matching the right employee to the right job, which can get very, very, is important with very complex customer work tasks. And all of these SLAs we were talking about, due dates, they're not rigorously enforced or even part of the workflow systems. They may have some type of SLA tracking, service level agreement tracking, but it's not their primary focus to make sure that work gets delivered on time. So again, this is just looking at this slide. It's just, again, the trouble with these processes when it comes to people is they're typically designed around the process and not the employees. Who the employees are they there and present, or are they on vacation, the working hours of the company. Also, there's this concept in my number 2 item there called cherry picking, which happens. And cherry picking is a term that's used all over the world in some form or another, where employees decide what work they want to work on rather than what's the most important item that needs to be worked on right now. And that's a huge problem. Cherry picking exists almost everywhere. So what's the impact of all these things I've been talking about? Well, quite honestly, backlogs are very common in many businesses. Well, I was just researching something yesterday where, and this is unfortunate, but in the U.S. Veterans Administration system, they have a backlog of 800,000 claims from veterans and people coming in from the different military areas. I mean, and it's almost a year backlog to get claims reviewed. Well, that's an extreme. But in almost every business, backlogs are pretty common. Let's take an energy company. First Energy is a very large energy company in the U.S. They have 6 million customers, and their billing exceptions every month are in the hundreds of thousands. And without some kind of a really way to order those exceptions, it was just a very inefficient way to do things. It creates a lot of frustration. There's a lot of manual work that managers have to do to try to create reporting for this area, whereas the workflow systems may be great for some other reporting, but as far as the performance of the employees, the workload itself, and the SLAs and the due dates of work, that's not being reported on. That's pretty much a manual process. That's a limited reporting area. So let me give you just one example of a company that's Stericycle, which is an international company, kind of an interesting company because they're doing medical waste management, tracking and disposal, and in the UK, in Europe, and in the US. It's a B2B company, so they're business to business, and but they did a lot of research, and they showed in that challenges area that their loyalty dropped, and it dropped up to 48% when tasks were not handled well in the back office. And they also did research to find out what was the impact of a loyalty drop from when tasks were handled well or customers weren't pleased with back office processes. And they found that it was really a devastating thing to their business. So they set out to actually change the way work was being managed from the front office to the back office. And when in the back office for medical waste would be things like complaints, issues with medical waste containers. They want to change their pickup, things like that, enterprise type functions. And with a huge company with 400,000 customers spread out around the globe, that's a lot of functions that have to be efficiently handled, or customers, even in the B2B world, get dissatisfied and can jump to the competition. So I'm going to leave you right now with this and then come back and explain how we're going to recover this time. But what if you could, if what I said is true, is that there is wasted time and inefficiencies that is really impacting the customer experience. How can we take that back and make it more efficient and prioritize customer work? So with that's, as John says, that's a little cliffhanger for you, and I'll come back and answer that question. I'll turn it back to you, John.
Great stuff, Dudley. I like having a cliffhanger, so leaving everyone in suspense for part 2 of Dudley's look at workload management and its impact on the back office, and then indirectly through to the customer experience. That's coming up after our next Customer Champion Spotlight. So I'm going to take control back from Dudley and introduce you to our next industry speaker, which is Jim Cheshire, and Jim is Head of Process Improvement at Prudential Insurance. So welcome to you, Jim. Hope you can hear me loud and clear.
I can, thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody.
Fantastic. I'm just going to change your slide deck, Jim, and then hand you control of WebEx.
Okay, fantastic.
So that's coming through to you. Click once on your screen and then you're in full control. So Jim, it's over to you.
Okay, I can see that. I just got an error report actually. I think it might be crashing. I'm going to have to fly blind and rejoin. What I'm here to talk to everyone today about is essentially a suggestion scheme and the way in which we were able to harness the energies and the ideas of the people operating in our front and back offices, as well as in the various support structures. John, can you click on, please, to my first page? I can't actually.
No, that's okay. Just tell me when to forward, and
if you forward now to the page saying what was the problem.
There we go. There you go.
That'd be great. Okay, so we're all used, I'm sure, to having big projects with big profiles that fix the big stuff in an approach centered around either a process or a system issue or a control measure issue. We're well versed on that. We also, I'm sure, have lots of local initiatives trying to progress incremental change, looking at people's training, their objectives, the way they're aligned to various business problems. I'm sure we're also all familiar with working in fairly complex organisations. Insurance is quite a technical industry. We're multi-site, we outsource. All of those things lead to silos and complex little bits of processing that fall outside of our main business processes, but have built up over the years and are handed down as new people join and become part of our fabric. They also make it difficult for people to connect when they do see a problem. And of course, opportunity is all around us and appears all the time. It's very easy to be missed. How many times have you sat at someone's desk talking to them about what they do and hear the sort of fateful phrases like, because we do, we always have done it like this, I'm not sure, but that's the process, those kinds of things. And there will always be someone around who knows how to do it better and perhaps doesn't have the right tools at their disposal to do something about it. So often those things just sit below the radar. So what we wanted to do was to tap into this local opportunity, a rich seam of issues. The knowledge is out there on the front line, or the back line, as we've been hearing partly today. And we just wanted to tap into that as a normal part of what we did, not as part of a project, but just as part of our BAU. And also to access people who are not the normal subjects. We often, I'm sure this is true in many organisations, rely on the same subject matter experts. And of course, going that way, you will make progress, but you may be guided down the route of one particular individual, and you're not necessarily capturing everything. And to steal a bit from Tesco's, every little helps, of course. What we found through this initiative, the Improve initiative, is that there are lots of small improvements that, taken together, we've proven a significant reduction in risks and control gaps. We've made significant cost savings in the hundreds of thousands, mainly, to be fair, in the shapes of arms and legs and harder to realise, but it's kind of that dark matter in the organisation that drains our ability to meet the main service levels. So we've seen a corresponding increase in our adherence to service levels, and that's obviously flowed through to happier customers in many of the processes that have really embraced this strongly. We're now in a market-leading position for customer satisfaction and moving into positive NPSs from negative. And finally, of course, as our colleagues, we've seen roughly a 20% engagement improvement over the corresponding time frame. You can't, of course, solely attribute it to this programme. There's lots of other things happening, but it's all part of the general trend to improve. So if you could flick on, John, I'll just talk through how we did it.
There you go.
So we should have a slide that says online suggestions portal that delivers. I'm sorry I had to blank it all out. You can imagine why, but you get the basic idea. Is we had a structured portal for people to register their ideas. It was structured around their team structures as well as categories of idea. It reflected the status, the popularity, and there was a dashboard here that showed how things were moving through the process, which I'll cover in a minute, but also what kind of ideas were most popular and gaining the most collaboration or the most interest. We also had a leaderboard, what teams were suggesting the most and what teams were delivering the most, and that obviously led to some healthy competition. And of course, we had to go through a little bow wave at the front of some ideas such as, can we have a different payment mechanism in the canteen, and what kind of milk do we use, and all that stuff obviously comes through, but that quickly dies away and moves into customer-facing ideas. And we very clearly did not constrain people. We said you can raise an idea about anything. The only constraint we put on was sort of one of decency, really, and of course people behave in the right way, and start to, once they've got their things out of the way, start to focus on the customer naturally. So if you wouldn't mind flicking on again, John. So this page here is just illustrates a table of ideas. We categorise them around communication or environment, people, process, governance, system, technology, product, the usual kinds of things. But people are able to browse, search, and find them, and then they're able to vote on them, whether they think it's a good idea or a bad idea. And you can start to see the ideas that are gaining the most support or are the most contentious in the business. That was really important to the management of this process, which I'll come on to in a second. But what it meant was everybody could express some sort of view and engage with it and influence our priorities. John, if you wouldn't mind, on to collaborate. And this was the bit that really made it work for us. We were not about someone, whoever raises it needs to fix it. We were not about you can raise these ideas into some magical team that's going to pick it up and fix it for you. What this was about was facilitated resolution. And what we did was, in the rollout and the communication of this, was say to people, raise the idea and you will be involved in shaping it and resolving it, but you'll be supported. And if it is big enough and we need to create a project or put it somewhere, we will do that. But the vast majority are things that just need people to be facilitated. So what we did was create facilitator networks, so dedicated people in all the different areas of the business that got together every week, reviewed the portal, looked at what was happening, what was moving, and as time moved on, that network sort of grew informally into senior managers and became a place where people could comment and essentially blog and collaborate online. As you can see here, I know you can't see the text, but you get the idea. People can go and say, well, I think it should do this, and what about that, and have you thought about this? You should talk to this person. And facilitators could just move that through the process and make sure that was happening. And they would also track numbers and look for things that had stalled, that kind of thing. But the whole ethos was empowering and connecting people and developing the ideas together. And it was amazing where the answers came from. And some really, really dramatic improvements to the way we process things were coming from all parts of the globe, with people saying, hey, yeah, we had this problem and we did this. We built this thing, do you want to use it? And within weeks, the problem's gone away. Something that people have been struggling with for years was already fixed somewhere else. And it was that connection that was really the power for us. So in closing, if you could just move to the last slide, John, please. It's about visibility. We've really made it highly visible. There's posters everywhere with ideas, intranet articles. People are rewarded. Local ownership has sprouted up, so I see everywhere I walk around the building, there's posters everywhere with what they've done around Improve. People are getting awards and recognition for it. It's just gone through its first birthday, and so we celebrated that, and we sent out a card and an Easter egg to everybody that was branded. So it just became highly visible. But the key to it was the exec participation. So it's heavily sponsored. People could see execs blogging and sharing ideas. Execs were standing up and using it in their own communications. I've seen this great idea, get involved with this. And that gave it some credibility and credence. And now really the support has become so widespread because people can see the value on it. They're being listened to. Success is celebrated, and it breeds more. And as I said, people are really beginning to engage with it, and engagement in our colleague surveys has risen by 20% over that period in the teams that we piloted it with, and I've had the longest time. So we're fairly confident it's well received and well supported, and the usage statistics just clock up every month. People are getting more and more into it, and also actually the quality of ideas, which is slightly hard to measure, but you can get a flavour from what's coming on. People are starting to think a little bit bigger and beyond their own world as well. So that, in summary, is what we did. And I'll hand back to you now, John.
Fantastic, Jim. And I'm seeing a great connection between what Jason talked about in the first champion spotlight on what you've talked about with this sort of social collaboration to get those suggestions coming out of the organisation with regard to fixing those broken processes, and also on the engagement piece, which Jason also. So there's lots of interconnections there, and we'll come back to that during the Q&A function. So thank you for the moment, Jim, and we'll be speaking to you again during the Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've got questions for Jim with regard to his presentation, just click on that question mark on the floating toolbar, and we'll have those questions coming in. If you've got a problem with the Q&A function, you can use the chat function to post questions also, because we can monitor that this end. So feel free to use the chat function if you're having issues with the Q&A function. But moving swiftly on, we have that cliffhanger with Dudley Laris from Genesis, and we're going to return to him now. So I shall welcome back Dudley and change over your slides, and let me just.
Thank you, John.
We go back to slide 1. Let me just hand over control of WebEx to you, Dudley, and away you go.
All right, thanks so much. Well, we'll pick up where we left off, which was what if you could reclaim some of this wasted time or inefficiency that may exist in service fulfillment areas. And so let's take a look at that. Some of the challenges that specific roles in the company have, and I'm looking at kind of from a customer experience perspective here, but it could be from a business perspective, line of business, or even IT or CIO. The strategy is extremely important in creating that end-to-end service strategy, and how is that able to be done? How can we make it easier to do business for customers? But also some of these other concepts there I think are important. Segmenting customers by value. Are we going to treat everybody exactly the same? You know, that generally has gone away over time. And then other problems are cropping up, such as there are more channels to deal with even in the back office. And one example of that is one of our customers, PayPal, of course, a global payments company, and they have a front office and a back office. A lot of their back office functions are things like fraud, but in the front office, where a lot of the complaints and cases get created, they're 60% real-time phone calls, but they're 40% emails, because they're an online company, and I guess people don't automatically think of calling into PayPal. So that's over 100,000 emails a day that they have to deal with, and need to be treated almost like a phone call. So, you know, getting that strategy, that end-to-end strategy, and I think Jason certainly touched on that, and go back to him because it was such a great setup for me. But also the measurement and performance. How do you measure the customer experience in on-time delivery when it goes into employee areas that are not tracked or managed very well right now? It's very difficult to manage and measure those areas and what it does to the customer experience. And finally, alignment and buy-in. If you have multiple channels, multiple processes, and you're trying as a customer experience officer or someone involved in that to make sure that there is an end-to-end successful journey, you've got to get everybody on your team and be able to align people. So those are some big challenges. Now, how are we going to address that? Well, that's where the cliffhanger comes to. We have created some technology that is able to manage work, customer work, in a better way, and it complements your current systems. It doesn't try to replace any of your workflow systems. It's a complementary system. And it's a work distribution system, as number 1 says, based on employee capabilities and your business values, not necessarily just the process. The process is still there, but now and how it works is when a workflow says, well, now a person needs to review this item. Either it's an exception that needs a employee review, or a claim that needs employee review, something like that, or a complaint. then we interface. We don't have to integrate with a system. We just through an API, application programming interface, we can communicate with that workflow source system, and it'll tell us we need a person of this type. We're tracking that task then and making sure that whoever we assign it to, which is based on skills, that they're going to address that work quickly. And if they don't address it quickly, we can pull that work back and give it to someone else, so we can maintain the service level or help you maintain the service level. But the number 2 item on the top, very important, we provide one aggregate view of all the work and channels. And you might say, oh, that's pretty tough to do, or I don't believe you guys are doing that, because we can give this one aggregate view of different work processes, different channels of work such as email, and we prioritize all that work based on your business rules. And we're doing that successfully for many companies around the world. And then that number 3 item on the left, then it provides this consistent system for work distribution that operates with all your core systems. And the benefit, is number 4, is that it determines the next best work that employees should be doing, rather than that being a manual process by a supervisor or letting the employee decide. And we're not denigrating the employees at all. They're great people. They work hard. But if they're selecting their own work based on their own needs, they may not necessarily know what the next best item is based on your business values. And it provides great insight because we measure, we track, and we report on all the work as it's all the way through the process, and especially when it's in the employee's hands. We also integrate this solution, which is called workload management, with workforce management, WFM, so we're able to forecast employees, the workload, and schedule employees in the back office based on the workload. And also, this last one, creating a virtual team, just one quick example, which is Ministry of Justice in New Zealand. They had a problem where they had teams all over the country, but they're all kind of marching to their own beat. They had different leaders and goals and objectives. They're actually doing collecting fines for the government. And one of the benefits of implementing the solution was creating a virtual team with all the same rules, all the same business rules, and work being distributed to them fairly in a similar way. So just as kind of as a summary, and the value we're adding here is we're asking some questions that aren't typically being asked. And again, I'll go back to you, Jason. I hope you don't mind. But you're asking some of these questions, and I think that's important. Who is the customer? And why do you ask who is the customer? How should that customer be treated? What's the customer history? What do we know about them? What's the business priority that should be applied to that customer? And when is the work required to be completed? And maintain that all the way through so the customer is always happy. Who's the best resource? And also even proactive notification, this last one, notifying customers of progress of their work, because if they get notified, they don't call in and say, where's my work? And that, cleans up a lot of work for you. So the basic things we're doing here is ensuring deadlines are being met. We're matching the workload to your resources, and we're leveraging and developing your employees' skills to do that. Now we come back to Stericycle, which is part of the cliffhanger. They did measure loyalty, and they use NPS in their own loyalty metric. This is their own loyalty metric, but it goes. You can see it starts back in 2009 at the bottom of the slide and comes up to the current, almost present time. Excuse me, and they saw this huge alarming drop in loyalty in 2010, and that's what prompted them to really address both the contact center and how they were distributing and managing work in the back office. And loyalty numbers have started to go back up, and they're really pleased that it continues to go up. And they're offering more channels to do enterprise work and really continuing on. I'm almost out of time here. I just want to touch on a couple of these are some of the key use cases that we're talking about: a complex task, the right person, right customer, eliminating that cherry picking, reducing backlogs. So those are some of the benefits, and we could talk about that offline. One further last point is a company called IINet, second largest telecom in Australia. About 1,100 agents, several sites. One of the things that we do there that I think came up in the previous discussion is that a lot of back office or service fulfillment employees take calls and also do work. And that can be a real headache, because if you're doing, focusing on a work item, but you also have to take a call, it really inhibits productivity. So what we're able to do is a thing we call work blending. And work blending paces out that, where if based on business value, we can decide with you if a call is more important than that work task, or if somebody is working on a high priority work item for a customer, they may not be bothered and they may not be interrupted by a phone call, because we're able to pace that out really for them. So some of the newer use cases, the work blending, self-service, and even being able to measure employee skills and push training out to them. But I'm not going to take the time there. So workload management, all of the things that I've been talking about, it's very interesting. I hope maybe that you'll contact us or take a look at that further, because I think it's an interesting area for your business. So thanks, John, and appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dudley. Thanks for getting up at the crack of dawn, or even pre-dawn there in San Francisco, and taking the time to share some of the innovations that are coming out of Genesis, which are having a real impact, as you've demonstrated. I love the chart showing the connection between loyalty and the implementation of workload management solutions. So stay on the line, Dudley, and don't go to bed just yet, and we'll continue the conversation after the next two customer champion spotlights. So, ladies and gentlemen, we come now to our third customer champion spotlight. Let me just take back control of WebEx here, and I'd like to call upon Ben Nicholson, who is the former head of operational excellence at Barcap Operations. So let me unmute you, Ben, and welcome you.
John, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today.
There we go. I've switched your slide deck there, Ben, and I'm just going to drop down and give you control of WebEx. Just click once on the screen, and it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Already there's been some awesome observations that really resonate with what I believe. So Jason's observation around real value and getting things right first time. I love Dudley's idea of people cherry-picking work and the ways in which that can hold us back. And Jim's ideas of small improvements supported by the portal, facilitated networks and exec support. So those are already fantastic insights that I hope to sort of support and add to with some of the work I'm going to cover off here on root cause analysis. This segment is going to talk about how we can industrialize root cause analysis to get underneath issues, generate insights, and deliver improvements very quickly. So the picture on the right challenges us to see how we can make a difference by seeing past issues to root causes. So this session, we're going to cover off why we need to make them actionable, how we use use cases and standard root cause codes to get underneath the solutions very quickly, what we do in terms of training, recording issues and resolving them quickly, and how we do that in terms of when you've got sufficient opportunities on your opportunities log and you're ready to pull the trigger on one or several benefits to do that, and the importance of harvesting the benefits to make sure they actually happen. And I've got a few case study slides to show you through the results this achieved for Barclays Capital, and then encouraging you to try it. So without further ado, to summarize the approach, if you're working, for example, in the investment bank where you've got a heavy flow of deals coming through the system that are either originated in the market where a market maker is taking a stance on the market, or it's a client wanting to fulfill some business and they come to the dealing room, Then when that trade has been captured, it flows through the value chain of the investment bank. And then there may well be a point where that trade will stop its journey and becomes an exception. So it's key to improve, and this is an acronym I've coined down the left-hand side of the 7 stages. Once you've spotted your exception, we used a policy decision, which was that all exceptions had to be logged in a repository, and we applied standard root cause codes when each exception was fixed using 5 WHYS techniques, and I trained everybody in operations who was going to get their hands on client-facing exceptions how to use the repository and the standard root cause codes. Once you've got the information collected, in our case we used a database because it was a global operation, but there would be nothing to stop you doing this in a spreadsheet. You would aggregate your issues and prioritize them by root cause type. So for example, if your static data was causing you the biggest problem, you would get to that first and make sure you worked out ways of ironing that out. Revise your process documentation and any artifacts that support that process. Be open to further improvements before you pull the trigger on the change, and also include what strategic solutions you might be heading towards. Verify that solution is actually going to work when you pull the trigger on it, and genuinely eliminate the source of the issue, and then execute the change, communicate how it's going to work, and make sure that that becomes live in the process. So typically we might see exceptions not necessarily being actionable. So a typical scenario might go something like, I record all my operational issues and share them with the business, but I can't get any traction in resolving them. So the question will be, how do I get that traction? And the answer is with case management, standard root cause codes, and some fact-based Pareto analysis. So you can imagine traders in a highly profitable investment bank not taking very kindly to me producing a name and shame league table of the least accurate traders and going to their chief operating officers saying, I think you need to have a word with these guys who seem to have rather poor accuracy rates, but then getting them to actually realize that this is causing issues and getting them to actually do something about it. But without that information and being fact-based, they were able to carry on for some time with a process that had grown organically and wasn't well structured. So logging the case is an imperative, and figuring out for your organization what the way to do that might be is key, and then extracting that on a regular basis. So the continuous improvement groups that I chaired, we met Tuesdays and Thursdays because we had a very urgent need to get our processes improved. And during the course of the next 2 or 3 years, I ended up chairing 100 meetings to make sure that the processes were running as smoothly as I possibly could. So at the bottom of this diagram, there's the value stream, which the trades would flow through with a client being onboarded, the sales team getting involved, the trade being executed, the middle office getting it into the system, the trade support team checking that all the attributes were correct and it hadn't been booked with a decimal point in the wrong place or back to front, so a buy for a sell, etc. The documentation team who would have to produce the associated legal documents that would be signed to make the thing binding, the settlements team who dealt with the money, a collateral team who made sure that all the monies that the bank held against each other in the event of corporate failure was correctly calculated, and that again was dependent on all the prior bits being correct, and then the valuations you would produce for your clients. So that whole stream had to run well, and effectively if you got the trade capture piece wrong between sales and trading in the middle office, everybody else down the value chain would struggle because the documentation wouldn't match what the client had, the settlement wouldn't balance, the collateral was out, and then the valuations would be questioned. And then you've got this quite the opposite of a virtuous circle, which you need to get back on track. So the 5 WHYS technique was something I trained everybody in operations to think about. I know almost all of you are going to be familiar with this. The key things to focus on in the 5 WHYS technique is to be very frank with the people you're working with about the fact you're asking the question why 5 times. It's not because you're dim or you're not getting the gist of what they're saying, but it's to repeat it where you restate what they've said each time as you drill down through the logic you're trying to break down. In the lower part, I've got an example whereby there may be a break on a trade because the cash values are wrong. It could be that the day count convention you're using is incorrect. So for example, dollars has a 360-day year and sterling has a 365-day year. And if you've got the wrong one in your system or a different one to the counterparty, you'll get trade breaks. So why is it incorrect? The second why would be, well, your calendars are failing to be updated correctly. Why is it failing? And it might be because there's a scenario in your calendar that you haven't tested. So, for example, Russia will throw in a bank holiday at very short notice, and not many systems can cope with that. So the fourth why would be, why did that scenario not get thought of? And it might be that some more IT training is needed for the people who design these systems. So at root cause level, you want to address the second and the fifth whys very rapidly. Firstly, get the calendar straightened up. And then secondly, you want to deliver some IT training to the people that are going to write your systems build documentation. So moving on to what you need to do, when you get a transaction flowing through your system, it could bounce through the pipeworks getting stuck with incomplete data or delays or poor static data, etc., meaning that as you try to hit the bullseye with your process, it's got a high degree of variability and it's difficult to control. What you want when you've done all the root cause analysis, and the key to it is to use standard root cause codes. So did the trader write the ticket out incorrectly, or was the ticket correct but the trader's assistant keyed it in incorrectly, and actually get underneath, have I got a trader accuracy issue, or have I got an operations issue, and then, or is it static data? And once you start to iron those things out, you can make quite rapid progress. The goal being to get things right first time, on time, every time, and if not, to fix it quite quickly by addressing the root cause. So some of the typical things we'd see for something going slowly through the pipework might be that key information is not requested up front and then stuff gets stuck in the pipework later, or there's a delay where information is being waited for. One of the major issues for us was static data that we used to drive the process being incorrect or miskeyed data. So as you start to iron all these things out individually and sometimes simultaneously, you can pull your process accuracy into being very tight. The challenge in an operations area when you start to do industrialized root cause analysis is that you've got a bow wave to get through where you're doing more work to record that case and get underneath the root cause analysis itself. So I've tried to illustrate in this graph here how the work might layer up where you've got necessary work, some manual effort to keep the necessary work moving, some rework because you didn't get it right in the first place, which is exacerbating your issue. You might have some root cause analysis work that you weren't doing very much of, but you're starting to ramp up. And then as you use your root cause analysis work to drive your remediation work stack, you can start to get to fixing issues. So as you see from periods 1 into 2 to 3, your actual overall workload does go up briefly, but as your root cause analysis starts to help you and your remediation work goes up, you can see very dramatically, you start to take your rework line down, then you take your manual effort line down, then your necessary work starts to go down too, as you can start to spot automation opportunities and the way to redesign the process where that's going to be helpful. And over time, the yellow stripe starts to thin down again because you don't need to apply quite so much effort to the root cause side of things because your process is starting to mature and you're starting to deliver some service excellence to your customer. So a typical way that the silos might play with each other is, for example, in the first instance, a documentation team, which might be on the second day of a transaction being processed, might catch an issue. They would relay it in the second stage back up to the middle office to say, can you have a look at this and see what the problem was? It might be apparent that some static data was incorrect, so they would, in the third stage, contact the static data team and say, this static data is incorrect, can you correct it and tell us when you've done that, and then we'll send the trade down the pipework. And then at the fourth stage, when that trade is resubmitted, it should go down the pipework correctly. So some of the key tricks here that really helped us in doing this root cause analysis, on the left side, we've got a prioritized opportunities log. So in that opportunities log, we placed every single thing that we wanted to fix. We did a cost-benefit analysis that was on a rolling basis for how many trade breaks could we avoid with executing each piece of change. Then we make that change happen and put it onto a benefits log, and we spot who spotted the issue, who identified the root cause, who identified the solution, and who ultimately implemented the solution so that all four parties can get due credit for what they've done. So just to give you a quick look at the performances that was needing to be influenced. So in mid-2007, an interbank league table was produced showing how the various banks sat in accuracy order. And unfortunately, Barclays, who I was working with, were last in that league table. And this is the first league table on the left that was ever published. and my boss had a suspicion that we wouldn't do very well in it, but when it actually came out and we were last, it was very embarrassing. He said, could you set up something and make this better? So we had to get to 90% within 6 months and 94% within 12 months. So I managed the continuous improvement rigorously. Then we were the first bank to hit 98% accuracy later the following year. And then in 2010, we were the only bank to hit 99% accuracy as an average for the whole of 2010. In the bottom left-hand side, sticking with the theme of customer service, of these 17 banks, 14 were surveyed in a ZEN survey, and Barclays came last in the customer service survey. Then by 2010, having ironed out accuracy and speed, and having trained everyone in operations how to do top-down thinking, a technique where you're very concise in how you describe what you'd like your customer to do to help them do their bit in fixing a trade, that contributed to us being ranked first for client service. So to give you some stats on the rework bubble that we had to push through, before this work was undertaken with 60% accuracy, we were processing 16,000 trades a month. 6,500 were reprocessed at least once. So then a few years later, and these particular figures are by late 2009, we hit 99% accuracy. We were able to quadruple the volume we processed. So that had reduced our rework by 90% down to 667 trades. So in taking 6,500 down to around 667, that's 10 times less rework. So that's 10 times better from a rework perspective. But because volumes had quadrupled, it's actually 40 times better in terms of process quality. And there's a little graph down the bottom right-hand corner to show how we moved through the ranks for our client service rating. So what were some of the things we did here? We used exception metrics to get underneath the root causes. We put governance in place so we could see who were the most accurate traders and sales folk. We used some smart metrics so we could work out which trader dealt with which salesperson, and they had the worst combination of accuracies. And those two people might want to have a conversation about why they're not communicating very well. We used an issues and a benefits log so we could work out the aggregated approaches that were going to be most effective. We ended up using the group messenger channel so people could collaborate live while executing their process. We ironed out things very rapidly where teams were not communicating around their processes because they were virtual teams from around the world. We looked at instrument data that backed up how the trade was going to function. We looked at how brokers were performing for us and where they were sending us faxes. We tried to automate that. And we looked at one of the issues which was slightly surprising to me, which was some of the counterparties with very long names. You couldn't actually fit it into the deal entry field. So we had that changed. And then you could see the whole of JP Morgan, New York, Prop Desk, London, rather than seeing JP Morgan, New York, and not any of the rest of it and just have a guess. And then we put policies in place. So if you were booking more than 20 trades in one block, you had to get a third person to check it and perform a six-side check. So to recap the key stages, identify your exceptions, manage those in a common repository and apply standard root cause codes, perform Pareto analysis where you're sorting it by the biggest causes of issues first, revise your processes, be open to further improvements, verify before you execute, and then once you've executed, make sure you communicate effectively to get it right first time, on time, every time, and make sure you respond quickly to issues. So in a nutshell, I hope this technique helps you accelerate your operational excellence benefits, and I'd like to hand back to John. Thank you.
Ben, that's absolutely fabulous. A great insight into the science of root cause analysis and then actually making the outcome of that turn into remedial actions and obviously beneficial change for the organization. Lots of stuff that I'd like to come back to when we get to our Q&A section. But for the moment, Ben, thank you very much indeed. So as I take control back of Ben, I'd like to introduce our final speaker for today. Our final customer champion is Otti Voort, who is the Vice President for Global Customer Service at BT Global Services. So Otti, welcome, and let me change the slide deck onto yours and hand you control of the presenter tool. So if you click once on the window, and then it's over to you, Otti Voort.
John, thanks a lot, and Ben, that was a really interesting presentation. I must say I'm a big fan of problem management, so it looked stunning. I must say the last time I've tried to talk about good customer experience in the telco sector, someone asked me whether that wasn't an oxymoron. Hence, I'm very grateful for an opportunity to showcase a few examples of what we've done in our pursuit of customer excellence, and thus hopefully do my share in redeeming the industry, even if Jason has done a great job at the beginning in sharing some examples there as well. As John said, my personal accountability is to provide in-life customer service to BT's major enterprise customers around the world. Hence, I will talk about customer experience mostly from a customer service angle. And in the next 10 minutes, I'll be sharp and short. I'll give you a few facts about BT and reflect a little bit about some typical challenges we and similar companies face in terms of customer experience, and then share 3 very short examples of specific back office initiatives we've implemented, just to provide some more input for the discussion later. And finally, I'm going to close with a reflection on our customer experience management. So in terms of BT, I'm certain most of you are familiar with BT, hence here are just a few key facts about the business. We have about 90,000 employees, and the business generated more than 90 billion of revenues in the last financial year. And of course, we were a very proud sponsor of the Olympics. More important for my examples though, whilst we are very visible in the UK, where we have about 18 million retail customers, we are in fact an absolutely global business. And BT Global Services, which is BT Global's enterprise division, has more than 7,000 international customers in about 170 countries. And many of the world's biggest corporations are buying networked IT services from BT Global Services. And in the financial services sector, for example, circa 1 in 3 financial traders worldwide uses BT's platform today. And as you can imagine, as such, we are therefore running a very complex business. We cover most of the countries in the world with a huge breadth of offerings. At the one end, we have a very rich portfolio of local and global products that we provide off the shelf, but it goes all the way up to very bespoke, global, customer-specific offers and even business process outsourcing. So we're facing what I believe are a number of typical challenges for global B2B service businesses, and maybe some of the colleagues on the line can confirm later if they recognize some of these issues and have the scars. As an example, most of our large customers, which are a big chunk of our business, want tailored solutions with dedicated service models and have very stringent service requirements and SLAs. And these services are by their very nature more difficult to price, to design, to implement. And once in life, it is often problematic to keep track of inventories, of cost and performance metrics, and to manage a plethora of global and local suppliers. And of course, our customers need their services delivered consistently all over the world. And of course, our customers want an accurate and very often a single bill. That's what great customer experience means for them. And more customers I talk to care much more about their end-to-end service wrap than any underlying technology. So in a nutshell, the inherent complexity of the operations is, I think, a significant challenge for companies like us, both in terms of customer experience and, of course, profitability. And not surprisingly, billing and global service delivery, and we've heard about that a little bit before, are very often key areas of concern. And in order to address this complexity, what BTGS has done over the last few years is to build a consistent and quite straightforward global service model and structure aligned with ITIL service management standards. And we've invested in consolidating and optimizing the key processes within, leveraging shared services and global delivery hubs wherever possible. So I would like to have a quick look at 3 of those non-customer facing processes that we have examined. So starting out with service introduction and industrialization. I'm a very strong believer that in order to effectively protect the customer experience, one needs to begin right at the design stage. Any shortfalls in service and solution design can often not be remediated once in life. And it's therefore very important that the service teams are fully represented when we develop new products or solutions for customer bids as that voice of the end user. And this can also help to ensure that the focus remains on the end-to-end service rather than any specific technologies, which for, I think, every traditional product company is quite an important shift. And secondly, in order to optimize not only the customer service quality, but also value for money, and both contribute to customer satisfaction, it is critical for us to standardize offerings as much as possible. More standard means in that context better predictability, higher speed, less risk and cost, and better alignment with skills. But of course, that brings the dilemma as our customers value tailored solutions, and today most of our customer solutions are non-standard. And it's not an easy challenge, and our objective here is to modularize our service offer in such a way that standard components can be combined and configured to deliver most of what our customers need based on a scalable model, leaving only a small veneer of the solution to be fully dedicated and bespoke. And we've made some good progress along these lines, as you can see, putting in place a dedicated service design assurance team that reviews every single bit on new product, developing and applying some clear design principles, and we've also defined and rolled out a tiered set of standard service wraps around our global products, as well as what we call repeatable design patterns for more complex sector-specific requirements. So that's one example right from the front end of the business. Turning more to the fulfillment, service delivery, and assurance area, another example that I wanted to give is supplier management. And traditionally, we have been very strong at commercially managing our suppliers via procurement, but we have not always had a consistent way of globally managing our suppliers operationally. And given the importance of our suppliers in terms of providing that excellent customer experience worldwide, we've made some important changes here as well. Again, we established a small central unit and consolidated all performance information, as well as the ownership over the method and the management of the suppliers. But we then also appointed a number of local supplier managers in all key geographies around the world, including Asia Pac and Africa and the likes, given it is really critical to establish a meaningful local relationship with each key supplier. And we're now running, based on that methodology, standard monthly reviews with our suppliers, where we develop joint action plans based on a standard dashboard. And this is not only about pointing out issues. We really try to create some win-win partnerships here. At the end of the day, for example, fixing a repeat fault is hugely important for my customers, but it's also beneficial for our suppliers as it can save them costs. And we are at a stage now where we are seeing some real improvement with many suppliers. And moreover, we are using supplier information now very actively at bid and order stage to ensure we select the right suppliers, not only based on immediate cost, but based on total cost of ownership and service quality. And we're also refining the service levels we offer around the world based on what we know our partners can truly deliver. And the last example on billing, as I pointed out earlier, billing is a key issue in terms of dissatisfaction, but also often the material cost when a company does not bill everything it should. So a few years ago, we've established a shared services team for contract delivery support called Contract Delivery Shared Services, or CDSS. And the aim here was to establish one standard approach for all contract delivery support processes that manage revenue and cost assurance, and that includes commercial inventory management, billing, dispute resolution, and so on. And the goal was, of course, to maximize inventory and billing accuracy, so going back to the point about root cause analysis earlier, as well as free up our contract team so they could focus on their customers rather than on the back office operations. And we have initially taken a small number of major contracts, consolidated their support teams, and established that best practice, and then we've transitioned the capability offshore and scaled it up. And subsequently, we've replicated the model in other geographies, so now we can operate in exactly the same way everywhere, even if our customers have some specific legal or security requirements that require the support in certain countries. And this was a huge success for us. Today, about a quarter of BTGS's bills are assured by CDSS, and the quality of our inventory and billing, thanks to very rigid quality management standards and assurance processes, has improved immensely. You can see there up to 99% right first time on billing, which is stunning. And at the same time, we've saved significant cost. And for me, this is one great example of a situation where, rather than just doing the same for less offshore, we've really eliminated a root cause of an issue and increased both margin and customer sat. And as you can see, there's a common theme with these three examples. We've always identified the issues, consolidated the control around it, defined some clear performance metrics, as was pointed out earlier, and developed a consistent process and tool set and industrialized it. And again, as Jim pointed out earlier, there are often lots of people that are keen on the old process, so that requires some work. And as Ben pointed out, very often that means there's initially more work to be done before it gets better. And my last point, and with that I want to close, is about customer experience management, which you could argue in our case is yet another back office function. And when we decided in 2011 that achieving best-in-class customer loyalty had to be one key goal in support of our strategy, we needed a mechanism to galvanize the whole organization around excellent customer experience. And the first step here was to give everybody a true view of where we were. So we developed in-house a central customer portal. And on that portal, we consolidated all key data points for around 1,800 major customers using a standard dashboard with feeds both from independent surveys as well as internal metrics. And that, for the first time, gave us a really transparent view of all the key metrics around these customers. but also it created a symbol, and I think in change management, creating symbols is very effective as a manifestation of our strategy, the home of our customers right in front of us. And we then gave about 3,000 decision makers, including the CEO, access to the portal and launched the governance around it. And we're now running regular reviews where for every customer, the improvement plans are registered and tracked and issues are shared across departments. And we also manage a number of programs to address common issues in parallel. And of course, customer loyalty is part of everybody's scorecard. But the most, the beauty around this was really a change in behavior where, as people before maybe sometimes had been afraid to highlight issues or had been too busy to ask for support, today everybody is focused on it. And there's real excitement around everybody trying to help out proactively whenever a customer is in danger of not being satisfied. And this has been a key enabler for us in exceeding this year's loyalty targets and to focus everybody's effort on customers. So in conclusion, I would argue, and as a contribution to the panel, my view is that it's critical to design and sell solutions that meet customers' needs extremely well and facilitate in-life operational excellence, and that the processes and tools in the factory are fully optimized. But as they say, customer service is not a department, it's everybody's job. In order to be successful, it's really important to have everybody continuously focus on improving customer experience. And I close with a quote from Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, who said, "We see our customers as invited guests to a party, and we are the hosts. It's our job every day to make every important aspect of the customer experience a little better." Thanks. Back to you, John.
Thanks very much, Artie. Lots of detail there, ladies and gentlemen. Just remember that we will be sending out a recording link for this webcast tomorrow, Friday. And so you can recap on all of the great information that all of our presenters have put forward today. So we come to the more informal, more spontaneous part of the proceedings, which is our Q&A and panel discussion. I see that we've had quite a few questions coming through the Q&A function. So we're going to be addressing as many questions as we can, and seeing if that will invite or facilitate a discussion amongst our panelists. I'm just going to pop back my slide deck. So there you go. So if you've got questions during the Q&A session, if you could hit that question mark on your floating toolbar as we described earlier, that would be absolutely great. And I'd just like to repeat, if we don't actually address the question that you asked during this session, because we are getting a little bit pushed for time, we're going to be addressing as many of those directly with you. The relevant speaker will make contact with you and answer that question directly post the event. So nobody's questions will be wasted. Now, in terms of timing, I know that a lot of you have to step out at the top of the hour at 2 p.m. And totally appreciate that. We're going to be overrunning slightly so that we can continue the discussion. So for the purposes of the recording of this webinar. So if you do have to step away and you want to catch up on the end of the discussion session, the Q&A discussion session, then of course you can catch it on the recording from tomorrow onwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump straight in. I'm going to unmute all of our speakers. So be aware, speakers, you're going to be live on air. And I think I'm going to address the first question to our first speaker, Jason Stanton, because this is your presentation, especially the part, Jason, about how you were motivating and encouraging the back office staff to actually get on the phones and talk to the customer about the issues that they were having. That caused quite a lot of excitement on the Q&A function, and lots of questions around that about how you did that. So an obvious question to kick off with is sort of how did you go about incentivizing the back office staff to pick up the phones? How did you actually, also from a training perspective, because a lot of back office staff aren't trained like the front office or the contact center guys. So how did you go about sort of making it all happen and keeping the quality level high?
Sure. I think we absolutely recognise, John, and guess that this would be our most difficult part of the transformation. But actually, it went much smoother than we anticipated. I remember sitting down with the operational managers who were going to have one-to-one conversations and group conversations with the people that were impacted, and saying to them, this is going to be the most difficult part of the transformation, and we need to spend as much time as possible, to really gain the buy-in from our advisor population. And what we really focused on was the why factor. Ben picked up on it, I thought, brilliantly, in his presentation there. It's the why piece. Often when we communicate change to our advisor population, we don't explain why. So we really got them to think about them as a customer and putting themselves in the customer's queues. And we told stories of examples, personal examples that I've been through when I've contacted contact centres, being passed around, etc., and how that made me feel, and trying to really bring it alive to our advisors. I mentioned to a couple of people who sent me questions directly, yes, we did have some fallout and we expected that, but we made a commitment to all of our people that we would find them a suitable role, so we didn't lose anybody from our business. And we really created, I suppose, some excitement in explaining the value that the advisors could have. The only incentives we put in place were actually incentives where they made a new sale. So we didn't incentivise them to pick up the phone, because we actually said it's now part of your role, and actually it's part of the customer experience that Sky wants to deliver. And we got them to a point where we said we would invest training and development. So previously I think they were quite nervous around the fact that we just expect them to do it and put the headset on. Absolutely not. We planned in the time. We planned training around those guys, and actually we had touch points in each of the training programs so they could feed back to us about what went well and what didn't go so well. And personally, I've always been critical in the past that our training teams would perhaps just train someone and then they'd go out on the floor and expected to deliver, and instead this time we brought the trainers out to do the floor walking with the advisors, and they would then take the feedback back into the next training group and make that next training group even better. So it went much smoother than what we anticipated. I think if I could give any advice if you're thinking of doing it, is involve the guys, be up front with them, don't hide anything, ask them how they would like it to work as well, because we got some great ideas from advisors, particularly on the aspects of how they wanted to be trained. And we're lucky in Sky in some respects, because we do have budget, unlike some people, to incentivise, but actually what we found is we didn't need to do that.
That's absolutely great, Jason, and I think I get out of that there must be a whole load of boxes ticked around engagement and involvement and motivation in terms of giving the back office an identifiable place within the organisation and showing them how they make a direct impact on the customer experience. So thank you for sharing that with us. And actually, I'd like to now put the next question to Jim, because Jim has to leave us at 2 o'clock, and I want to discuss a little bit further about this whole area of social collaboration, because the collaboration piece is the ultimate form of involvement, the ultimate form of recognizing that the people behind the scenes have got loads of insight into the rights and wrongs of the organization. And Jim, if you had some advice for the audience in terms of if they're thinking of implementing some form of suggestion system, whether it's as formalized as you've made it or more informal, how would what are the basics that people have to do to make this sort of thing work?
Number one, I think business cases are hard to write, so you have to believe in it. It's arms and legs, small improvements, they all add up, and you have to have a basic belief that it's worth it for your organisation. I think number two is the facilitation network. That piece has been absolutely vital, and it's where we've failed in the past. That gives people raising ideas the support, the comfort, the knowledge that somebody will help them. People in that role build up a network and just get better and better at it. And plus it means that big things can find a route into the right project. So that piece was vital. And lastly was the exec type engagement making it highly visible and well supported brings people on, and those execs need to get to a place where they understand. We will get some requests about the type of coffee and stuff like that. There will be bits of that, but they need to stay the course, and gradually you will get through to the really meaty stuff, and that for us is important because that let everybody engage no matter what they felt the problems were, and we found, if you look back at the history, that those people that got most engaged got their own kind of personal, local issues sorted, and then started to move into their process well pretty quickly after that. So if we'd tried to close that off and prevent that kind of thing, we would have lost that engagement, I think. So it'd be those three things.
That's absolutely fantastic, and I suppose just a final, sort of a final question for yourself is in terms of that business case that you mentioned right at the top there, and business cases, as you say, are absolutely very difficult to write in all circumstances. But what would you say are the low-hanging fruit in terms of the ROI from both, obviously, the time resource that you would put internally, but also any investment in technology to facilitate it happening? What are the sort of the low-hanging fruit that people can sort of point at as the obvious returns on investment?
Well, we went after the normal ones, but it was customer colleague engagement was easy to prove. Risk and control gaps, again, easy to prove. And it was the cost savings, the harder part. But we actually didn't invest very much in this. The whole platform cost us about $30,000 to build. The real investment came in the facilitator network, and so the ROI there can be proved locally because they come from the local teams. So we built metrics around those people and them evidencing the value of the ideas that were coming from their areas that were getting through to completion. So they became objectives for those people to not only get ideas to completion and implementation, but also to articulate the value of those to their sponsors, their execs. So you've got that local connection to, I'm getting more out than I'm putting in.
Jim, that's absolutely fantastic. I know you have to dash off, so thank you very much for your time and your participation today. And ladies and gentlemen, if there are any of you stepping away at this point, we're now at the top of the hour, 2 o'clock, then thank you very much for your company, and hope you will join us again soon for another Champions and Innovators session. But we're going to continue for a little bit longer, just to extract as much insight from our expert panel of Champions and Innovators as we can. And I'm going to ask the next question to Dudley, and because I think I've seen, especially in the professional media and talking to the industry in general as an observer or as an analyst of the market, I've seen that the whole back office area is working its way up the priority list for organizations. Have you seen a particular increase in traction around the back office and the ability to identify and fix broken processes and the linkage between the back office and customer experience? Have you seen that coming through in your conversations with clients and prospects?
Yeah, yes. Well, I would agree. I think many of the panelists have mentioned that maybe in the past we looked at specific areas for the customer experience, but now we're looking at the customer experience more broadly. So, whereas in the front office is maybe the tip of the iceberg, so you have to look at what are all the touch points, where are the holes in the experience, and I think companies are doing that, and they are challenged because it's getting tougher to do with more work coming in, more work channels certainly. Costs have to be reduced also, and so I think, for one, this is of course the Genesis perspective, but I think there is a role that technology will play here along with best practices that have been discussed. I think it's a marriage of those two things where, really finding the best practices, finding the sweet spot for how technology can play and impact some of these neglected areas that have been neglected in the past because I don't think they've been really addressed in terms of how certain areas in the back office do impact the customer experience. And now I would agree with you, John, there is a new awareness that we've looked at other areas. We've looked at the contact center. We've done a great job there. A lot of, just one final thought on this particular question, which is a lot of our customers that have implemented this type of technology, which is called workload management, they have a contact center understanding, and they understand what can be achieved in the contact center because there's, we're aware of what all the agents are doing in that case instead of employees. We have presence. We're pushing work to them. So a lot of those managers have said, why can't we do that in the back office? We're not going to treat everybody in the back office just like a contact center agent, but we can take some of those best practices and apply them to the employees in other areas. So big awareness from that perspective.
Thanks for that, Dudley. Otti, BT Global Services, obviously by its nature, very large organization operating in many, many countries. Is standardization the key to getting that consistency of experience across such a large organization with so many third-party suppliers who all have their role to play within the overall customer journey and customer experience? How do you... Well, I think first that question is standardization the key in terms of your processes, your procedures, etc. How have you achieved that, or is it always an ongoing journey to address the customer experience in such a big organization?
I think, John, two thoughts in my mind. One, the customer loyalty being the end goal, and customer satisfaction being kind of the interim goal. As in, hopefully, if customers are satisfied, then they will return to buy things from us. And customer experience being the journey that the customers have to be led through in order to be satisfied at the end. I think it requires a holistic approach. We need to make sure that at all the touch points that a customer has with our company, as they say, the moments of truth, that experience is positive so that the customer is satisfied and that they stay loyal. And I think that always has to be something that is pervasive across all of the processes, all of the departments in a bigger business. With that in mind, however, in the operations space, I certainly think the mass customization, standardization based on modularized proposition is something like the holy grail. We've seen that in the manufacturing world in the 90s, where through CAD/CAM, robotics, and again modularized platforms, it has become possible to make personalized offer economically viable and produce them in high quality. And I think something similar needs to be achieved in our space as well. It's very difficult, and it will take some time.
But I assume you must have a whole load of alarm buttons, which then obviously ring alarms when broken processes are identified and they move through to whatever process you have for remediation, etc. So, could you just give us an insight in how on an operational basis that identification of broken processes happens and how they go about getting fixed? Is it I assume there is a strict process in there.
Yes, in regards to the operational improvement, we are following lean processes. So we've Six Sigma experts who will look at the waste that is produced within the processes based on a set of KPIs, both on the productivity and quality side and the respective outcome metrics. So indeed, it is a very structured process. There's a first step with regards to having the right architecture and setting the right processes up. Once processes are in place, and as you suggest there, if they are suboptimal procedures or if there are problems with the execution of the process, we're going into it in a large amount of detail. And lean as a technique has been very successful in the business, because I think what it helps with it's triggering that bottom-up engagement of the employees to contribute ideas and solutions. We've heard this from some of the fellow panelists. which ultimately not only gets their buy-in, but also very often is much closer to the solution or to an effective solution than when someone comes from the center and tries to help. So I think the lean approach is very efficient in terms of looking at broken processes or issues with processes.
And in terms of measuring the effectiveness of, let's say, your lean initiatives, etc., one of those measures of effectiveness a customer experience or a customer effort or an NPS or some customer level measure?
Yeah, of course. So for every process, there will be a combination of efficiency and quality metrics. So in a typical call center or help desk environment, we will have metrics like response times in terms of calls and first level resolution and the overall resolution times or mean times between failures and the likes. Also very connected, of course, to the respective customer service levels and specific contractual obligations. And at aggregate level, we are measuring customer satisfaction. We are not at the moment measuring NPS. We're using an external firm which is providing a standardized and independent survey for most of our big customers. And on the efficiency side, we are measuring productivity, i.e. the number of tasks or the touch times per task per person per period. And on the problem management side, also things like the number of resolved problems that we have got in our known error database and things like that. So it's very metrics driven today, the operational environment.
Great stuff, Otti. Well, thanks very much for your contribution today. Finally, I'm going to come to Ben. And Ben, in your experience at Barclays Capital, in your role in operational excellence, can you just give us an idea of how that role fitted into the organizational structure? Because obviously to make root cause analysis effective in making change within the organization, and obviously from the perspective of this webinar today, we're looking at the impact on the customer's experience. To actually make the role effective, you must have the authority to ensure that the remedial actions that are required to fix the problem you've identified actually get done. So could you just give us an idea of how your role when you were at BarCap fitted into the organization and sort of how you went about making sure things got done once you identified the problems and the actions that were needed?
Of course, John. So in the early days, I was operating solely within the credit derivative business line, and I only had direct influence over the people in operations. So effectively, if the trading teams or the sales teams disagreed with me or refused to do what I was saying, that was entirely within their capabilities to do so, and my only recourse was to escalate up my chain of command and try to get the most senior people in operations to go and talk to the most senior people in the trading room to get them to be told to do something. But what actually happened, because I was using fact-based data and the people in trading and sales couldn't actually argue with the issues I was pointing out to them, it put them in a position where they wanted to cooperate. In addition, at that time, we were losing a lot of money in operational losses because the pool of trades each month was 6,000-7,000 that were wrong, and in that pool were many errors, and effectively that was coming directly out of the front office's bonus. So although producing name and shame league tables was unpopular, they could see it had a direct benefit on their pockets, which particularly appeals to investment bankers, I'm led to believe. And then after 3 or 4 months worth of work, we got from last place to 4th place, and then the CIO phoned up my boss and said, can you explain what you've done here, because you've not spent any more money. You've taken process accuracy up about 50%, client services going up, the staff seem to be happier, and I don't understand. And my boss said, I'll better go and send Ben to come and talk to you. So I spoke to the CIO and explained what I'd done, which he liked. And then off the back of that, he said, could you write some principles of good practice for capturing trades? Mm-hmm. So we did that, and then we started a working group to flesh out those principles of good practice. And then after a few months of refining them, using across all of the function areas like trading, sales, technology, product control, finance, etc., we signed those off and then got everyone to benchmark against the principles of good practice. And where you were not compliant with them, you had to produce a plan to comply with them both tactically and strategically. and that effort saved the firm a further £100 million, and consequently I got promoted out of facing off to just credit derivatives, and then which was covering 250 people in operations, and then my remit covered all of operations globally, which is about 4,000 people. And then I built up a team of sort of ex-McKinsey, ex-GE people, and trained them all up and went about our business of trying to make the firm world class.
Ben, that's a great insight. Thank you very much. I'm now going to close down the webinar because we've just come to quarter past 2 here in the UK on the live presentation. So I'm going to thank you first you, Ben, because I was the last person to speak to, but also all of the other presenters who provide us with so much insight, and thank you very much for spending your time with us today. We have obviously some thank yous. I've just highlighted our customer champions, Jason, Jim, Ben, and Otti. Thank you very much also to our innovator, our customer innovator for today, which is Dudley Larris of Genesis. Thanks very much, obviously, to Genesis for their continued support, and I must stress that Genesis are one of our earliest supporters here at the Directors Club in our mission to bring educational and knowledge share opportunities to the customer-facing profession. So thank you very much, Genesis, for your support of this event and support of past and future events. Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to follow the Directors Club on Twitter, you can do so at the Twitter handle at DCGBNI. You can also go to our website, which is dcgbni.co.uk, and there you'll find lots of stuff about the Directors Club. You'll also be able to go to the event page, which will be current for today, and then will become archived in the event archive on the website from tomorrow, and you'll be able to access the profiles of the speakers. And other information about today's events, but also other information about future events. And we'd very much like to have your company at future events, be they the face-to-face events, such as our Customer Engagement Day. The next one coming up is our Customer Engagement Day South on June the 27th in Heathrow. So look on the website if you want more details about that. We do dinners and breakfasts throughout the year, and it may well be that you might be available to attend one of those also. Finally, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's event. Without you, none of this is possible, so thank you for spending your time, and I hope to have your company again in the very near future. My name is John Snow, and it just leaves me to say a very good afternoon, and see you again very soon. Take care.